Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.
A South Bay politician is facing fraud charges. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amitha Sharma, in for Maya Trabulsi. A Chula Vista City Councilwoman and her brother, a political consultant, are charged with felonies, including theft and money laundering. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer looks at the implications for South Bay politics.
District Attorney Summer Stephan has filed criminal charges against Chula Vista City Council member Andrea Cardenas and her brother Jesus Cardenas, who resigned as Chief of Staff to San Diego Council member Stephen Whitburn earlier this year. The 7-count criminal complaint includes charges of conspiracy, grand theft, money laundering, and failure to file tax returns. Prosecutors say the siblings fraudulently obtained more than $176,000 in COVID relief funds in early 2021 by misrepresenting their political consulting firm, Grassroots Resources. Andrea Cardenas was elected in 2020 with her brother's help. She's up for re-election in March.
She has the option of resigning. Of course, I think that's probably what's in the best interest of her district. If these scandals kind of remain and not going to go away, and it keeps her from being able to just focus on the issues that are in the city.
Phil Sines is a professor of political science at Southwestern College. He says trust needs to be restored in our fragile democracy.
I know that it's impacted the perception that people have about voting in politicians. I mean, right now with the division that we have at the national level and even at the state and local level, all that we need for democracy is more scandal, turn more people away from voting.
USD political science professor Carl Luna says this isn't a good look for the Democratic Party, as Jesus raised money for a variety of elected officials.
Democratic Party really needs to sever ties and do an internal reflection on it to show the public that this was a limited contamination. It's not endemic to their whole power structure.
There is no comment at this time from the city of Chula Vista. Arraignment for the Cardenas siblings is scheduled for next Thursday, November 9th, at the San Diego Superior Court. Jesus faces up to 4 years and 4 months in prison. Andrea faces up to 5 years and 8 months if convicted of all charges. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
A defense attorney is seeking to disqualify the San Diego district attorney over what he says is a biased prosecution stemming from a violent 2021 Pacific Beach Trump rally. KPBS reporter Andrew Dyer has more.
Videos shared widely online show violent confrontations from both anti-fascist and pro-Trump demonstrators at the rally, held 3 days after the violent insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. But when District Attorney Summer Stephan sought to prosecute those involved, it was only anti-Trump demonstrators who were charged.
San Diego District Attorney's Office has had a pattern over the last 5 to 6 years of ignoring violent acts by white extremists, by white hate groups, by white nationalists.
Curtis Briggs is a lawyer representing one of the defendants in the case. He says members of San Diego's hate groups have been emboldened by law enforcement's inaction over the last several years.
So they've been able to run around basically with a get-out-of-jail-free card, beat up people, cause fights, provoke fights at protests.
Briggs represents Jeremy White, one of the anti-fascists charged in the case, with conspiracy to riot and assault. White pleaded not guilty, and Briggs says he's innocent of the charges. In late 2021, District Attorney Summer Stephan announced conspiracy charges against 11 anti-fascists who she says caused most of the violence at the Pacific Beach rally. But Briggs says several videos shared online from the rally show violence from pro-Trump demonstrators, including members of the Proud Boys and the American Guard, which the ADL describes as a hardcore white supremacist group.
They're well-known bad actors in the community. So for the San Diego District Attorney's Office to ignore their crimes, it would have taken a level of intentionality to the extreme.
In 2017, Will Johnson says he and other activists were attacked by American Guard members at a protest near the border in Otay Mesa. Despite videos and Johnson's report to law enforcement, he says the DA declined to charge anyone involved.
I mean, it's my understanding that, if you get assaulted, then the people who assault you should, go to jail. And what I saw was that these guys were let free to go do it again and again and again.
Briggs says prosecutors have been kicked off cases for similar reasons, including one he handled in San Luis Obispo involving a Black Lives Matter protester. A spokesperson for the DA's office didn't respond to questions or a request for comment. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
Israel is pushing ahead in its war against Hamas. This week, Israeli Defense Forces bombed a densely populated refugee camp, setting off condemnation from the United Nations. Gloria Pazmino reports.
A hammer is their only tool. Then it's their bare hands as Gazans sift through piles of mangled metal, concrete, and dust in search of bodies. This is the second hit on the Jabalia refugee camp this week. The Israeli military says it was targeting a Hamas command and control complex and killed several Hamas members, and blames Hamas for intentionally endangering civilians by building its infrastructure in populated areas. The director of Gaza's Indonesian hospital says the strike killed scores of people and injured hundreds more. The scale of destruction is widespread and pressure is growing on Israel to call for a ceasefire as the civilian death toll from the war escalates. In the meantime, a glimmer of hope as injured Palestinians and hundreds of foreign nationals, including U.S. citizens, have started arriving on the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing Wednesday. Back in the U.S., political pressure is mounting. President Biden was confronted by a rabbi during a private fundraiser in Minneapolis.
Mr. President, if you care about Jewish people as a rabbi, I need you to call for a ceasefire right now.
Biden responded by saying he was supportive of a humanitarian pause to allow for the release of the more than 200 hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. Muslim leaders representing a key voting bloc in Minneapolis say the president failed to meet their deadline to call a ceasefire this week.
No ceasefire, no vote in 2024.
Gloria Pasmino, KPBS News.
Palomar Health is accused of suppressing a public official's speech. One of its directors says the public health care district threatens to sanction her. KPBS North County reporter Alexander Wynn says she's filed a lawsuit against the district.
As previously reported, in September, KPBS and another media outlet reported that to access Palomar Health's website, users must accept the terms of use. A First Amendment lawyer told KPBS that potentially restricted public access to public information. Director Lori Edwards-Tate shared that same sentiment with Voice of San Diego, which first reported the story. After the story was published, she says the hospital district's lawyers sent her a letter saying she was being investigated for her comments.
I take that to heart. I care about that. So I feel an attack on me is almost an attack on the people that I serve.
She says when she spoke to Voice of San Diego, she was doing it as a private citizen and not speaking on behalf of the board. Edwards-Tate's lawyer, Karen Swiger, says the district's action violated her client's freedom of speech.
My fear is that this is something that they're going to utilize as a sword in the future when there are greater problems that she wants to raise to her constituents. They're going to say, oh, you need to come make sure your message is coordinated with us prior to speaking. That is just anathema to the First Amendment.
In a statement, Palomar Health said it took the action it did because Edwards-Tate was disseminating false and misleading information to the media. She says the action was retaliatory.
I understand it's not good for me not to have a duty of loyalty and care and try to degrade or misrepresent in a negative way the district in any way. The question would have to be asked, why would they be offended by something as simple as what I actually said?
First Amendment Coalition Legal Director David Loy says the Supreme Court has affirmed a public official's First Amendment right to speak on public policy that they don't agree with without fear of sanctions. He is not a party to the case and is not commenting on its merits.
The government does not get to be the ministry of truth. If the district believes that her statements were incorrect, it is free to issue its own statement and go to the press and explain why it believes her statements were incorrect.
Palomar Health Director John Clark, who spoke to KPBS about Palomar's terms of use, says he received the same letter from the district's lawyers as Edwards Tate and is also considering his own legal action.
It's intimidating to have the lawyers come after you when all you're doing is addressing your concerns and exercising your First Amendment rights, as any elected official should do.
Palomar says Edwards Tate's lawsuit is baseless and grounded in a misunderstanding of the district's media policy. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
Soon there may be more emergency housing options for San Diegans experiencing homelessness. The county is looking for partners for its $1.5 million sleeping cabin program. The grant application process opened yesterday. The county has enough money to build 164 square foot cabins. The grants would cover the cost of buying and building cabins for organizations with land to operate them.
At this point, we need to put everything on the table that we can to create housing, temporary or otherwise, for the folks that are on our streets.
Anytime we can expand housing options, and especially emergency housing options, then it's a great opportunity to move the needle.
The county says they are asking organizations to commit to a minimum of 3 years. The county also says its hope is that groups are able to take on 6 cabins, but they will work with partners pending their circumstances. California regulators are taking another 2 weeks to decide the fate of a much criticized plan to regulate solar energy on properties with more than one electric meter. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has details.
The proposed decision roiled solar advocates when it was released late last summer. It basically ends virtual net metering for apartment buildings, schools, and farms that don't qualify as low-income projects. Virtual net metering allows complexes with more than one electric meter to share the benefits of a single solar array, which helps lower electricity costs for renters. And solar industry officials say there's another bad provision for ratepayers.
Even when you're using the electrons directly from the solar system on your roof, from a billing perspective, you would have to sell those electrons to the utility at a low price and buy them back at a high price. It would ruin the economics.
The Public Advocate's Office says the existing system benefits mostly large businesses in California, with only a small percentage of participants being renters. The office argues the current system is not sustainable because it shifts costs to renters without solar. Matt Baker says the program should focus virtual net metering on the state's Solar on Multifamily Affordable Housing Initiative, or SOMA.
We believe that virtual net energy metering, will have a much more limited role as an equity program in the future. And that's kind of why we would like to see almost all of the emphasis on SOMA and the Emerging Community Solar Program.
SOMA projects steer financial benefits to tenants, but they only represent a small portion of the state's multi-meter projects. The state's investor-owned utilities say in legal filings, developing a new virtual net energy metering system would be too complicated and expensive. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Mortgage rates have snapped a 7-week streak of increases. Freddie Mac data released today shows the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage averaged 7.76% in the week ending November 2nd. That's down slightly from the week before. A year ago, the average rate was just under 7%. This data comes just a day after the Federal Reserve said it would leave its benchmark lending rate where it is, but hasn't ruled out a hike before the year ends. 2 fast food chains are raising prices for California customers. Chipotle and McDonald's franchises say they're raising prices next year in order to pay their workers. California lawmakers recently passed a minimum wage bill, raising the minimum to $20 per hour. Some 500,000 workers will benefit. But restaurant owners say they've got to raise prices in order to pay higher wages. McDonald's says it has not calculated how much prices will go up. Chipotle says the percentage will likely be somewhere between the mid to high single digits. The Rock Church is helping families in need ahead of the holiday season. The church is hosting drive-through food distribution events like the one you're seeing on your screen. Families receive bags of fruits and vegetables and other food items, as well as diapers if needed. Pastor Travis Gibson says events like this give people the extra holiday cheer they need.
Anything we can to meet people's practical need, all because we really believe that everyone has a spiritual need, and maybe that's why this thing has exploded, because people need hope, they need help, and we want to be able to bring that.
The next distribution event will be next Thursday at the City Heights and Chula Vista Rock Church campuses. November is here, and for those who celebrate Thanksgiving, the countdown is on. And a new forecast is revealing how much your turkey dinner could cost this year. So which items will be more expensive and cheaper? Cole Higgins has a look at why the star of the holiday meal is seeing a shift in price.
This year's Thanksgiving dinner is serving up some dramatic shifts when it comes to cost. Wholesale prices for turkey fell 29% in October compared to a year ago. That's according to Wells Fargo's new Thanksgiving report. The forecast is welcome news for turkey farmers and marks a major shift from last year when a wave of avian flu took out birds, leaving some farms struggling to keep up with demand, which led to higher store prices. This 2023, the Wells Fargo Agri-Food Institute says farms added 2% to 3% additional birds, and that robust supply plus a drop in the cost of refrigerated trucks to move supply from farm to store are contributing to the price drop. But get ready for some sticker shock, because the rest of the meal will cost you more.
Everything else around it, all those side dishes, choose to spend wisely and shop wisely where you can.
According to the Wells Fargo forecast, canned cranberries cost almost 60% more compared to the same time last year. So opt for fresh cranberries instead, which cost about 20% less compared to last year. And right now, production costs for canned pumpkin are 30% higher this year from last year. Russet potato prices are at an all-time high, with prices up 14% from a year ago. So consider going for sweet potatoes instead. Store prices are only up about 4%. To trim costs, experts recommend scaling back.
Do you really need all that stuff? Who is actually eating this? Do we have a dish that maybe only gets 2 or 3 bites? Scrap it.
For Consumer Watch, I'm Cole Higgins.
San Diego research think the vibrant marine environment near La Jolla Cove is directly linked to the underwater canyon just offshore. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says Scripps Institution of Oceanography scientists are spending time there trying to unlock the ocean dynamics that make that abundant sea life possible.
The crew aboard the research vessel Beister spent a week dragging sensitive machinery through the water around a submerged La Jolla Canyon. They're hoping to understand the complex processes that feed the rich ecosystem under the surface. Engineer Sarah Goheen says the team uses a winch system to raise and lower a CTD device, which measures conductivity, temperature, and depth. The team is tracking dye released near the canyon several days before.
So we're just yo-yoing nonstop with that, driving train 6 of the canyon back and forth to see if we can see the dye that we released on Tuesday, which is letting us measure basically how the seafloor here is shaping what the water does when it's hitting there, and how energy is dissipating or how energy is building up more, and basically just what the canyon does to the area.
The 4-foot-long tube resembles a model rocket. It can be raised and lowered quickly through the different ocean layers, giving researchers a snapshot of the water column from the surface to the ocean floor.
This is the crash guard, and so this is actually going to be removed when we are deploying it. So this is just for on deck, because they are crazy delicate and you can break them by looking at them.
There's another tool that does roughly the same thing, but much slower. Instead of pulling and dropping the device as quickly as possible, it is designed to take its time.
Falls at 0.5 meters a second. It's got these umbrella wings that actually open up in the water column so that it has a nice steady descent rate, and it free falls. And we need it to free fall nice and slow so that the sensors on the tip of it, which we have 2 different ones, one for shear and one for micro temperature, so that those can go down through the water column almost like a phonograph needle.
And the information it gathers helps researchers understand the different layers of the ocean and how turbulence affects them. The warmer water near the surface is separated from deeper, colder water by the thermocline. That's an active barrier between warm and cold, and it's also where the dye has persisted for nearly a week. Researchers added audio snapshots of the water column thanks to an acoustic device strapped to the side of the ship.
We can't use lasers, things that use light in water, because as you know, probably by looking into the ocean, can't see very, very far down. So light attenuates very, very quickly in water, but sound can propagate a lot further.
Postdoctoral researcher Liz Widener says the acoustic signals are sent to the bottom of the ocean every few minutes. The return echo helps fill in the gaps that the larger instruments miss.
We can also track the position of the thermocline, so we can track it with very high resolution. We're probably having, one acoustic profile every maybe 1 to 5 meters, which is much higher resolution than where, the CTD that we're dropping and bringing back up, that's maybe every 100 meters.
And for a solid week, the vessel spent every day with instruments in the water tracking the dye in the constantly moving ocean. Researcher Matthew Alford hopes that data will help explain the underwater turbulence.
This information is providing us with fundamental fluid mechanics about how the ocean works that is super climate relevant.
Oceanographers think the underwater turbulence brings nutrients from the deeper waters to the warmer surface layer of the ocean. That feeds all manner of plant and animal life, contributing to the vibrant undersea environment.
Simulations like this have been done for years, but for this one, I really like to see the structures in the dye, and you can just see how incredibly complicated the turbulent structures are.
Alford compares the underwater waves to the ones surfers might see on the surface. The tidal and wind-driven ocean forces hitting the slope of the canyon fuel the water's movement. The resulting patterns are complex but predictable.
This dye begins at the boundary, but very quickly, due to convergences in this process, gets shot out into the interior here. And this three-dimensional aspect of the turbulence is not captured in the models that we have right now.
In the week-long experiment, the dye released in the ocean teaches researchers about the underwater waves, and understanding the vigorous and complex turbulence that feeds life near the canyon is a small step toward understanding larger ocean processes that can affect things like climate.
Climate models have grid cells. They divide the whole ocean into grid cells, and the smallest grid cell of a state-of-the-art climate model is San Diego County sized. And so everything that happens in La Jolla Canyon is not represented properly in climate models, and we have to teach them how to represent that in what's called parameterizations.
Better climate models will lead to better understanding of the changes that are coming as the oceans warm with the rest of the planet. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
I'd say this is the perfect kind of weather. We're still tracking warm days and cool nights a little bit for everybody. But as we head into the weekend, we're going to get a return of more of an onshore flow. So that does bring the return of some low clouds and fog as we head into the weekend. Mostly clear, though, through tonight. Borrego Springs 46, Mount Laguna 42, Ramona 41, into San Diego 50 degrees in Oceanside tonight. Bit cooler, down in 41. High pressure has been in control, so dry and pleasant weather still lingers as we head throughout the day on Friday. You head farther north, though, and that's where we're continuing to watch a series of storms impacting the Pacific Northwest. Things, though, for us do stay dry and sunny as we head throughout the day tomorrow. San Diego 76, 77 in Oceanside, Borrego Springs 87, and Mount Laguna temperatures will be near 60 degrees as we wrap up the week. Throughout the day on Saturday, still staying pretty pleasant and warm through a lot of locations and still watching some rain into Northern California, but we will remain dry through the weekend. Taking you out to the next 5 days along the coast as temperatures will be gradually cooling. 77 on Friday, 75 on Saturday, 73 on Sunday, and temperatures keep dropping with a high of only 70 degrees on Tuesday. Further inland we go, and there you go, the cool nights, but the warm afternoons. Beautiful weather on Friday, 84, 82 on Saturday and Sunday, but then we're only back to the 70s as we begin next week. So a cool down on the way again. The mountains will stay cool over the next couple of days as temperatures stay pretty steady. Afternoon highs into the 60s. Overnight lows will be dropping to the 40s. And then it looks like the wind starts to pick up Monday and Tuesday, eventually bringing some cooler conditions by the time we head into the start of next week. Into the desert we go, where temperatures will be into the upper 80s on Friday, and through the weekend temperatures stay warm with the heat peaking on Monday, but then we'll have temperatures dropping a little bit by Tuesday. For KPBS News, I'm Ariella Scalise.
If any of these faces grab your attention, this weekend might be the time to welcome them to your home. The San Diego Humane Society says it recently hit a new record of dogs in its care at more than 750. More than half are ready for adoption, and starting tomorrow, the agency has a Name Your Price promotion. It runs through Sunday. Pet supplies and help with training are also available. She got her start in San Diego's comedy clubs, and she will soon host her own late-night network show. Today, it was announced Taylor Tomlinson will take over the time slot vacated by James Corden. After Midnight will air weeknights after The Late Show with Stephen Colbert on CBS. Tomlinson is from Temecula and attended CSU San Marcos while pursuing her comedy dreams. Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. KPBS Roundtable will have a discussion on local solutions for homelessness and what it will take to build more temporary and affordable homes. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Amitha Sharma. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.